in a village by the tall baobab tree.
They say life can change in a single moment. But what if the person who saves you is the one you least expected? What if a poor broken waitress suddenly finds herself in the arms of a billionaire? This is Emma's story, a story of pain, betrayal, forgiveness, and love. Emma was only 25, but her life already carried the weight of sorrow. She had lost both parents when she was a child, and the only family she had left was her aunt. Most people would expect an aunt to step into a mother's shoes, to provide love and care. But Emma's reality was the opposite. Her aunt treated her like a burden. Every morning before dawn, Emma was forced to wake up first. She scrubbed the floors until her knees ached, washed piles of clothes until her fingers turned rough, and cooked large meals she was barely allowed to eat from. If the food had too much salt, her aunt would shout at her in front of neighbors. If she forgot a chore, she was insulted and sometimes denied food for the day. But the worst pain came from her aunt's husband. His eyes lingered on her in ways that made her skin crawl. Sometimes, when no one was watching, he would brush too close, whispering things that made Emma's heart pound in fear. And when she cried to her aunt about it, hoping for protection, the answer cut deeper than a knife. Stop telling lies, Emma. Do you want to scatter my marriage? From that moment, Emma realized she had no safe place, not even in the house where she lived. She was trapped in silence, carrying her pain alone. At night, she would coil up in a small corner of the room, crying quietly into her pillow so no one could hear. She often wondered, why me? Why was I left behind in this world with no one to love me? One evening, Emma returned from the restaurant later than usual. She was tired, her feet aching, and all she wanted was to collapse on her small bed and sleep. But the house was quiet, too quiet. Her aunt had gone out for the night, leaving only her husband at home. As Emma stepped inside, she felt his eyes follow her. Where have you been? He asked, his tone sharp, but his smile unsettling. At work, Emma replied softly, clutching her worn bag. He stepped closer, blocking her path. You are growing into a beautiful woman, Emma. Do you know that? Emma froze, her heart racing. She didn't like the way he was looking at her. Something in his eyes made her skin crawl. When she tried to walk past, he grabbed her wrist firmly. You don't have to suffer like this, he whispered. I can take care of you if you do as I say. Emma's chest tightened in fear. She struggled to pull away. Please let me go, she begged. But his grip grew tighter, his words growing bolder. He leaned closer, trying to corner her against the wall. At that moment, Emma found her voice. With all the strength she had, she pushed him away and ran to her small room, locking the door behind her. Tears streamed down her face as she slid to the floor, trembling. For the rest of the night, she sat in silence, too afraid to sleep, listening to every sound outside her door. When her aunt returned the next morning, Emma gathered the courage to tell her what had happened again. But instead of protection, she received harsh words that broke her heart even more. Stop making up stories, Emma. Do you want to ruin my marriage? You ungrateful girl. You should be thanking us for giving you a roof over your head. Emma was speechless. The only person who should have defended her had chosen to ignore her pain. From that day, she knew she was truly alone. She promised herself to stay away from her uncle as much as she could, living in constant fear within her own home. To survive, Emma worked in a small restaurant in town. Her faded uniform smelled of smoke and fried food, and her feet ached from standing all day. But she smiled at every customer because she needed the job. Yet, the restaurant brought its own kind of pain. Some customers, mostly rough men who came after drinking, mocked her. They whistled when she walked past, called her names, and sometimes pulled her by the waist. Hey, beautiful, come sit with me. One would sneer. Another would say, a pretty girl like you shouldn't be serving food. Why don't you come home with me instead? Emma hated these moments. She hated these comments. She would force a smile, gently pull her hand away, and pretend she didn't hear their laughter. If she reacted, her manager would blame her instead of the customers. Once she dropped a plate out of nervousness because a customer grabbed her. Her manager shouted at her in front of everyone, "You clumsy girl! Do you know how much this plate cost? If you break one more, I will throw you out." Emma's cheek burned with shame as other waiters snickered. Still, she endured. She endured the harassment, the insults, the exhaustion, and every evening when the restaurant closed, she walked home with aching feet and an empty stomach, only to hand all her wages to her aunt. Her life felt like a prison, both at home and at work. But deep inside, Emma held on to a tiny seed of hope that one day life would change. Life took a dramatic turn one fateful evening. Emma had just returned from work, exhausted as usual, when flashing lights from police sirens filled their street. Neighbors rushed outside, whispering and pointing. Her aunt, her husband, were dragged out of the house in handcuffs. The police shouted charges, illegal business, fraud and theft. Emma stood frozen, her heart racing as she watched the only family she had ever known being taken away. Her aunt screamed at Emma, her voice filled with venom. "This is all your fault. You are cursed. Nothing good will ever happen in your life." But for the first time, Emma didn't cry. She just stood there, silent, tears welling in her eyes. Deep inside, she felt both pain and strange relief. Maybe, just maybe, her life would no longer be tied to this cruelty. Days later, while Emma was serving at the restaurant, everything changed. The bell above the door rang, and in walked a man unlike anyone she had ever seen. Tall, elegant, and confident, Mr. William Carter, a 40-year-old billionaire. He owned multiple businesses across the country, but he was also known for his humility. He didn't come with bodyguards or an air of pride. He simply wanted a quiet meal. While Emma walked over to take his order, her hands shook slightly, not because of his worth. She didn't even know who he was at first, but because his presence carried warmth. He looked her directly in the eyes and smiled. Unlike other men, his gaze wasn't filled with mockery or lust. It was calm, respectful, and gentle. "Thank you, miss," he said after she served him. "You work very hard. I can see it in your eyes." For the first time in years, Emma felt seen, not as a servant, not as an object, but as a human being. Mr. Carter began to visit the restaurant often. Each time he chose Emma's table, and each time he left generous tips, not to show off, but to support her. One afternoon, he asked softly, "Have you ever thought of working somewhere else?" Emma shook her head shyly. I don't have the qualifications, sir." "Sometimes," he replied with a kind smile, "all it takes is character, not qualifications." A week later, Emma received an unexpected call. Mr. Carter had spoken to the restaurant manager and offered her a new position as a personal assistant in one of his companies. At first, she couldn't believe it. Was it possible that someone truly wanted to give her a chance? It was the first step into a completely different world. The company was grand, with polished floors and large offices, but Emma's heart pounded with fear on her first day. She worried she would fail, that people would laugh at her, that she didn't belong. But Mr. Carter was patient. He guided her, encouraged her, and never once made her feel small. When she struggled with tasks, he reassured her. When others doubted her, he defended her. Slowly, Emma's confidence began to grow. They often worked late into the evening, going through files, making plans, and sometimes sharing quiet moments over coffee. Emma realized that behind Mr. Carter's wealth was a man who valued kindness, honesty, and loyalty above all things. And Mr. Carter in turn found himself drawn to Emma's pure heart. Unlike others around him who chased his money, Emma only gave him respect and sincerity. As weeks turned into months, the bond between them deepened. They laughed together, shared stories of their past, and leaned on each other for strength. One evening, after a long day, Mr. Carter said softly, "Emma, you have changed my world. You remind me of what truly matters." Emma blushed, her heart racing, but she didn't answer. Deep inside, she knew she was falling in love too. Months later, Mr. Carter planned a surprise. He invited Emma to one of his beautiful estates, filled with flowers and candlelight. As they walked through the garden, he turned to her with sincerity in his eyes. "Emma," he said, taking her hands, "I don't see you as just my assistant. You are the woman who had touched my soul. Will you marry me?" Emma's eyes filled with tears. She thought of her painful past, her nights of hunger, her years of rejection, and now here was a man who saw her worth. With trembling lips, she whispered, "Yes." Before the wedding, Emma made a brave decision. She went to visit her aunt in prison. Her aunt looked older, her face hardened by bitterness. "Why are you here?" she snapped. Emma took a deep breath. "I came to tell you that I forgive you. You may have hurt me, but you will not control my future. I'm getting married, and I choose to live free of hatred." Her aunt stared in shock, speechless. For the first time, Emma felt powerful, not in anger, but in forgiveness. The days leading up to the wedding were filled with excitement. For the first time in her life, Emma was not treated as a servant or a burden. She was celebrated. Mr. Carter's family welcomed her with open arms. His mother, a gentle woman with kind eyes, hugged Emma tightly the first time they met. "My son has made the right choice," she said. "From today, you are my daughter, not just my son's wife." Those words melted Emma's heart. She had never heard them before. She had never truly known a mother's love until that moment. Mr. Carter's father, strong but warm, looked at her with pride. "Emma," he said, "you are a blessing to this family. Treat our son well, and we will always stand by you." For the first time, Emma felt what it meant to belong, to be surrounded by people who value her for who she was, not what she could do for them. The wedding preparations were grand, yet filled with love. Dresses were carefully chosen. Decorations sparkled in every corner, and friends and family worked together to make the day unforgettable. Emma often found herself overwhelmed with emotion. Each time she tried on her wedding gown, she would look into the mirror and whisper, "Is this really me? The same girl who once cried herself to sleep in a dark corner?" Her in-laws treated her like their own child, guiding her through traditions, advising her, and making sure she felt comfortable every step of the way. For Emma, the preparations weren't just about the ceremony, they were about healing. Every smile, every embrace, every word of encouragement reminded her that she was no longer alone. She was part of a family that truly loved her. And so, when the wedding day finally came, Emma walked down the aisle, not only with joy in her heart, but also with the peace of knowing she was deeply cherished, not just by her groom, but by the family she had gained. The wedding was nothing short of a dream. Emma walked down the aisle in a flowing white gown, her smile brighter than the sun. Guests whispered about her journey, from a poor orphan to the bride of a billionaire. But to Emma, the greatest joy wasn't the wealth, the gown, or the glamorous hall. It was the truth that she was truly loved, truly, deeply, and sincerely. Marriage to Mr. Carter wasn't a fairy tale without effort, but it was filled with love, respect, and partnership. Emma finally had a home where she felt safe, a man who cherished her, and a future filled with hope. She built charities to support other girls who had suffered like her. Together, she and Mr. Carter became a team, not just in business, but in life. For Emma, the story was clear. Pain had shaped her, but love had healed her. Emma's story shows us that no matter where you come from or what you have been through, life can still surprise you with love and joy. Never lose hope. Her story reminds us that no matter how dark the past may be, love and forgiveness can rewrite the future. She turned her pain into strength and found happiness where she least expected it. Her story teaches us that no matter how dark the night, the sun will always rise. From rejection to love, from tears to laughter, she found her happy ending. What do you think of her journey? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more inspiring stories.
On screens, a tale they weave, ancient echoes in stories we believe. From Anansi's tricks to lion's roar, stories spun across the digital shore. Young and old, gather hearts in unity. Folktales stitched in our shared ancestry. Jubosmiles, where the stories bloom. In the flicker of the fire chases gloom. Songs of wisdom, laughter, tears, joining hands across the years.